Great. So I don't know, Niall, you wanted to take the lead on this to discuss how optimizing the pages would work through repurposing the blogs. That way we can sort of discuss what needs to happen after the fact.
Yeah, so I suppose to give a best overview, like when you create assets, we have a huge asset portfolio of content that has been live for a long time and therefore has good traction, and good positioning for specific keywords we want to target. So there's kind of a twofold element to the project. One is identifying pages within the blog folder that would have a very high bounce rate. So this is kind of natural for blogs anyway. You'd be looking about a 60 to 80% bounce rate is not abnormal for blog pages. However, what we would like to do is look at these pages that have the highest traction in sessions or page views and see if we can shore up some of the bounce rate by introduction of links in targeted pages that are like topically related to maybe some of the topic pages we've been working on, and then introduce a link from those pages into the topics pages just to create a bit of a funnel. So if you think of a blog page is kind of like a pre-awareness. So it's not specifically in a full awareness camp. It's kind of people come and go from blog pages without fully maybe knowing the brand. They can be return visitors. You can build equity over time. But we would want to just ensure a way of funneling from these specific pages, these value pages, into topic pages so we can increase traction in the topics page and shore up any traffic loss. A second element of this then is something we've discussed, which is finding pages that are ranking in for page one opportunities for high value keyword terms that we're after. And these, because these pages have been live for a specific amount of time, they've built equity. So they have got a solid traction in search and in results and good engagement rates. And what we'd like to do is try and identify pages within specific parameters based on the blog requirements of blog strategy that we could maybe pick. We'll say just for the first iteration, maybe 2 pages for each topic cluster we're building that we can migrate over. So what we'll be doing is taking these initial pages, optimizing them, building them out into longer form content and creating evergreen content, then migrating them into the content cluster to integrate them there and help build the content cluster authority. And redirecting from the initial page position in the blog search. So initially what we're doing is we can maintain the traffic that's coming in. We lose very little equity through the redirect. And instead of having people come into these high value pages from a blog perspective where you might have a high bounce rate of 70 or 80%, we try to retain them within the topic section to kind of maybe either push them to the next stage of the journey, which would be a solutions-based page or somewhere else within the content cluster. Then the basis for this would be identifying what pages would be applicable for this migration. So obviously the blog pages have a strategy themselves and specific requirements. So what we'd probably like to do is identify a parameter for identifying pages that we could use within this kind of strategy.
And by parameter, you mean like a timeline?
Well, obviously, so a lot of what you might find is a lot of the pages and blogs over time get buried. So even though they might have very good traction initially, it's kind of the newer pages might get more traction. But obviously, you don't want to migrate a page that's only been live for 3 to 6 months because that'd be too fresh. So, like, is it a year? Is it like, for example, I can just show a quick audit that I've done. Where is it? So this is just an audit I've done on the blog pages based on the highest volume of sessions in ascending order, and the bounce rate then is highlighted in red, anything over about 80%. Anything that I've highlighted red then is something that's been produced in 2020. So it's just giving you an idea of whereabouts the articles sit. And as you can see, it's kind of varied over time, but the top ranking kind of few tend to be more 2020. But then you've some that have been live since 2017 or 2018. There's still a very good traction as well. So I suppose from my perspective or our perspective, one of the things to isolate is there specific elements? Can we filter these by terms for specifically if we went, say, I don't know, if we were looking at something like DevSecOps, we can filter down to see what we have for DevSecOps that's living. So there we have it. See, the majority of them is actually new for that. One of them is old. But we can filter it down by specific topic, analyze if there's pages that would be applicable for either the migration or that would be working for more for the linking strategy. But if we were to look at then for the migration is I basically do that on position. So it's another audit I've here. Can you see the second page again? Yeah. So basically this is just a listing of all the URLs in the blog section for keywords that are ranking in the top 20 positions. Anything highlighted top green is the top 10 position. it seems like there's a lot here, but it's less because you can see multiple URLs are shown because it show a URL for each keyword it's ranking for. So each page might rank for like 10 keywords. So I suppose the ideal thing here would be to isolate it by key topic terms we're looking for that are in a top 1 or 2 position or a top 3 position that we could migrate over. So as I was saying, ideally in something like that, we wouldn't be looking to migrate over a huge volume of content. It would just be 1 or 2 specific pages, just as, I suppose, a test run and iteration to see what kind of impact it has, and if we can like build out the value of what would have been a kind of a blog page to create an evergreen piece of content and just kind of, I suppose, exponentially grow the ROI of the initial content production element of it.
It makes sense for the content marketing team. I want to ensure that it makes sense for, like, Rebecca, do you agree that this would be a good idea for the blogs?
I think, I mean, my attitude here is a rising tide lifts all ships. Like I don't feel like any kind of proprietary kind of attitude over the blog. Like I think if we have a framework in place to decide what things make the most sense to migrate over, and my understanding is you'd put a redirect in place for those, Niall. So if someone lands on it's Google surfaces that post, and then it's, instead of sending them to the blog, it takes them to a topic page. I think that makes sense. So I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying that the suggested time frame is if it's less than a year old, we leave it as it is to build traction, and we could potentially do some kind of remediation with adding more links and stuff to give people places to go once they land on the blog. But for older posts, it's worth seeing if that's evergreen content that we can make into a topic,
Yeah.
or a web article page rather. Sorry, I get all of these terms muddled. But what would be helpful long term, I think, is also to have a kind of framework for thinking about this, to say, like, actually maybe some of those things should never have been blog posts in the first place, and they were only blog posts because we didn't have the web article format. And that would be really helpful, and maybe that's something you and I need to figure out. Bree or Niall, I know you have a background in writing as well, so you can probably help us out there too.
Well, I think what you'll find, even from analyzing the content titles from doing audits and stuff before, is a lot of the content that does sit in the blog folder at the moment would live quite well and quite happily within the topics folder, because they do answer query-based questions that would be kind of awareness consideration. So maybe something to do would be to identify first, based on the topic, as in get each person who's running the cluster just to analyze the audits that I've done and maybe identify specific pages they'd like to look at. And then from there, we can qualify the pages, whether they can be migrated within the content cluster. And then once we've identified those, we can remove those target pages from the high bounce rate list. So we're not doing a double jeopardy, and we're not doing 2 jobs on 1 page, and then focus on the high bounce rate pages and just internal links. Because I know that going into Q4, I think there is a target for the topics page as well to increase traffic by up to 40%. So this is something that would really benefit that. And it would also kind of negate an issue that what happens when you build an ecosystem with blogs, that it's kind of a lot of internal linking. So people are going from blog to blog to blog, and you're not really giving an avenue of a journey to introduce them into the buyer journey, which is a big focus that I know a lot of teams are working on now. So there's multiple elements that are beneficial. So I suppose it's just a matter of, as you're saying, identifying what are the parameters for a blog when it's live to give it traction over time, and then what qualifies it as something that means we can initially target it as either as a migration. The migrations or the optimizations themselves should be fine. I actually built just this kind of tool. It's just very simple. But what it means is if you're analyzing a page for optimization, you can actually go through, just check each element. There's an instruction element on it here that describes what each one is. So instead of trying to identify loads of stuff on the page, you can actually simply just go through and tick 1, 2, 3. So once you've finished the list, you should have a list of 8 or 9 things on a page that requires optimization. So to help simplify the process. But I just finished it, so I'll have to get someone to run through it and test it first, just to see how applicable it is, and we can optimize it or reiterate it as required then.
Also, the other added benefit of this is that because we're working on web articles for specific topics, just 3 for this quarter and the following quarter, we're then kind of like dipping into the territory of recreating already existing pieces of content that the blog has hosted now for however long. So I think it would be really easy for our team to go through and even just by the title alone, identify what would be a more evergreen piece of content that could be updated rather quickly, and then pull it over to the web articles. If we wanted to start small, I feel like 2 would be really easy to do, because we don't want to just leave it as it stands as a blog. Like we would go in and update it, as you said, optimize it as much as possible, hopefully add to it, and then give it a new home and not lose traffic.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
like the redirect should make sure that you're not really losing a lot of the traffic, and any links or anything you wouldn't lose much equity on them. The time frame, that's why I was kind of specifying maybe 2, because obviously the big thing with migrating the page over and creating Evergreen is you have your initial content, you know it's got traction, it's ranking for specific keywords, so half the battle is kind of won. The elongated time frame is going to come from doing competitor gap analysis, online analysis to identify maybe semantic related searches, so you can identify topics to add into the page, and then doing your content gap analysis to look at competing pages for that topic to see what other elements you need to put in. So at least when you publish it, it is as up to date as you can make it. So for a timeline, you won't have to look at it again for at least another year or so. So then we can come back at 6 months, see what the traction's like, and if required, build in another optimization segment following on that. But that's kind of, I suppose that's the process you'll have to kind of structure once we have the initial launch process established.
That page that you showed with the green highlights, are those pages, you said that they're within the top 10 pieces of content, but they're not within this year. Is that accurate?
So it's just an audit I pulled from using SEMrush. So Google Analytics and Search Console will give you, Google Analytics won't give you your top ranking keywords for any page. They're fairly mean like that. So in order to identify what keywords are ranking for what page, we used to use third-party software. So we use SEMrush is what we use for that. So this is an audit for the blog folder, pulling every URL within the blog folder and all the ranking keywords for that at the moment, so in the last month or 2. So basically that's why it'll show the URL and maybe 5 or 6 keywords, because obviously the longer a page is live, the more keywords it tends to rank for. Each page will have an initial keyword term you want to focus on, and then 3 or 4 related terms or semantic terms that'll kind of pull in traffic, but you'll only have one primary one that it'll be optimized fully for, which means it'll be in the H1, your title tag, URL if possible, etc. So what this is, I filtered it down. I could have pulled all ranking keywords, but it would just be way too much information. So I just focused on keywords in the top 20 position. So what that is what they classify as low hanging fruit. It means these are the easy pages to optimize to push into a top 10, or if it's in a top 10 position to try and push into a top 3. So if your keyword is in top 3 positioning, you probably get 60 or 75% more traffic than you would in a position lower that. So it goes excrementally as you position in top 3 or page 1, and then if you go to page 2, it obviously drops way lower than that. So that's why you try and focus on a kind of a page 1 opportunity that we have already. So it means most of the battle is done. If we can get stuff that is ranking on a page 1 position strongly for a keyword we want, like how to implement CI/CD, or I don't know what, we just take an example of what kind of keywords we have here. Where's the ICD? No, it's not in there. Oh, I'm back.
I lost you. I don't know what happened to my.
So now you're gonna have to splice these together, Bree.
Editorial skills.
Wish me luck. I'll figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so I kind of lost you on the end of that, but I think that I understand like what I lost where you're searching for
to do
CI.
it, I suppose, is if the content team want to analyze the audit for the content that's available in the blog team, they can pull it by topic. Once they've identified the pages by topic, I can cross-reference with the keyword data, so we can identify the keywords for each one of those pages. and then we can finalize the pull for whatever 1 or 2 or whatever 3 targets you want. As I was saying, obviously this is the first iteration, so we're probably it's going to be a small bit of trial and error just to get the process properly mapped out, but it shouldn't be overly difficult. And once it's in place, then we can optimize as we move forward.
Okay. I think I don't think that that's a hard ask if it's too. I was thinking larger, like 10, like just like pulling over a bunch and working on them and getting them updated. But 2 is really small. So
whatever the target you want to look, I just kind of put it as 2 just to try, and obviously there's other projects and workloads going on, so it's a matter of scope time wise to what you can do. I know that optimizing content, even though it sounds very quickly, the research side of it and the on-page elements of it can be kind of time consuming. So I'm just aware that I know there is content cluster projects in the works already, so content's being produced, and it's just whatever, like you can build a target on whatever the available time limit is yourself. I was just kind of given a basic 2 as a kind of simplified approach.
Yeah, 2 is light. So for the to-dos for this would be identifying the keywords. I mean, not necessarily the keywords, because we know what the keyword topics would be. It would be CI, version control, and DevSecOps. Those would be like the basic topics that we're going for. And then have initial, I just want to make sure that you guys set the parameters, and then the content team will come in and sort of identify what makes sense for them. So the parameters would be past a year old, and then within the sort of the target that you've created within that spreadsheet. Is that right?
Yeah, if that's happy with the blog team. The only difficulty I'd say with the 1 year thing is, well, DevSecOps, as we look there, only has 1
article.
article.
There's nothing really to offer past that. I mean, I guess we could look at application security and update it from there, because I imagine that there's a lot more on app security. And we can sort of dip into other topics related to security for that one, and then update them accordingly. I don't think that we want to change the keywords necessarily. That's the other thing. So if we were to look at something that was from application security from a blog that was like 1.5 years old, we don't want to change the overarching structure of because that's why it's done so well, is the keyword, right? It's already ranking.
But
so
the thing is with the cluster as well, if the topics are thematically related, it doesn't have to be DevSecOps. For example, if someone's searching DevSecOps, is going to be within their journey just as interested in understanding a bit about some other elements of, as you're saying, another page.
Yeah.
But the topics are semantically related, as in if someone searches for that, they'll also search for that. Then that's perfectly viable to have within the cluster as well. So you don't have to retarget it. You just have to ensure that as an overall topical entity, that they are closely related. So if you think of a cluster, it's about kind of building authority outside of the SEO elements. So when someone comes to the topical page of, let's say, VCNC, from that page, they can access a whole plethora of information that's going to cover everything they need to know about that topic. So specifically, it doesn't have to be targeted at VNC. It just has to be included within the requirements of someone's search for it, for that topic.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I had one kind of side question that is totally unrelated, but does relate to URLs within articles. Is there a way to, when you're linking, and particular with external links, if you're linking within an article or a blog or a topics page, whatever, and it's an external link, and you click on that link from GitLab, is there a way to open a new tab rather than sending them directly from the page, so that you've lost that person off the page?
Yeah, so usually
I
like that's
we do that, and I want to
highlight. It's probably a piece of code, I'd say, because I know in WordPress it is an option.
We used to insert HTML in a previous role that I was doing, but maybe that's something to look at with when they implement the CMS. There might be like a shortcut for that.
There should be a way to do it now, and I was just curious because I do think that has an impact on us.
Oh, you lose a lot of traffic, because people generally open a window that doesn't remain as your window. So if it's the same window and it just opens to a new site, I think I can't remember what the exact percentages, but there's a big drop on people who travel back to the site because people don't usually use the back arrow icon. So that's why they say if you're going to an external site, so if it's internal link, that's fine for it to open on the same window. If it's an external link, make sure it's an external window, because that means even if they X out of that window or they forget it and reopen the
You're
computer, they might come back
sitting
and
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I didn't know if we have just been not doing that, but I haven't seen it done anywhere in GitLab, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but I was hoping for a code snippet or some way, because I want to continue to have good, like, one external link per article, but I don't want to drive people off the page. And I know that there's ways to do that, but I also just feel like there should be a way to just like open a new tab.
It's something we can look at in the blogs. I saw it in a few as well, actually, is the external link is actually higher above in the content than the internal link. So what happens is you might actually be losing traffic by clicking.
Yeah,
people
they should stay at the bottom.
So they're off the site. So that's,
but
that's on the list of things of just going to that page check. So you can actually just check the different elements. But that's one of the things on it anyway. But we can go through that when it comes time to actually look at the pages themselves.
Yep.
So I think first off the bat is just to look at identifying the pages for each of the requirements. So I have the audit data. So I suppose, is it down to the individual auditors then to analyze the content just to see what pages would be beneficial to each one of the clusters? Is that the...
I think that would make sense if they could just pick two. I don't know if, Rebecca, you need to like sign off on them for each topic cluster after the fact, or what the process you'd want to have happen on your side.
Yeah, I feel like because this is the first time we're doing this, I would like to be involved for the whole journey just to kind of understand how it's all working. And then from there, I think we can figure out moving forward if that's just like, you let me know what is going to be migrated or optimized, and then you run with it from there and I don't look at it again. But I think for this one, let's just pair on this so that we can make those decisions informed.
That's fine. And then I suppose once we've that done, it's an element to go to the second element, which is the blog optimization. And then, Rebecca, that I suppose is up to you identifying the quota for optimizations you want to do within a specific time frame, and then we can highlight that number of pages. And we look at the highest value, highest return pages. So the pages, I suppose, that have the highest traction in sessions or page views, and then with the highest bounce rate. So if we can even reduce that bounce rate by 5%, 10%, at least we're pushing that extra bit of traffic in through to the topics pages through the linking structure.
I'll update that issue that is open regarding this. And then maybe will you include the link to the audit template or spreadsheet? And then I'll share it with the content marketing team and sort of give them a heads up, like, to review these and come up with two, and then we can work within that issue to make this step happen. Does that sound good?
Yeah, if you want, what I might do is also with the content team, whoever's going to do the audit, is just to run through the list with them, because it might be a little bit confusing because it's just all URLs, and obviously just to explain the positioning and stuff and what would be the best kind of targets to go after, just so at least when they're doing it for the initial launch, they kind of understand the worksheet, and then sure, after that they should be fine to work away themselves anyway.
Okay. We have a call next week. Do you want to just do it then? Okay. That might make the most sense. Okay. We're not rushing into this apparently. So this will be a Q4 goal. So is there anything else we need to discuss? Otherwise, I'm just going to stop the recording.
No, that's pretty much most of the foundational work that needs to just be kind of launched, I suppose.
Okay. Good.